Imagine walking into a store with a simple purpose, to buy something you need, and instead of being treated with respect, you're laughed at, dismissed, and humiliated because of something you cannot control, your age. Now imagine the tables turning in the most unexpected way when the most powerful person in the room suddenly appears, and what happens next leaves everyone speechless. This is the story of Margaret, a grandmother who carried herself with quiet dignity, and how one unforgettable moment at a gun store turned her pain into power. Stay with me, because what happens in the final minutes of this story will make your heart pound. Margaret Parker was 72 years old, but her spirit was sharper than most people half her age. She had been raised in a small town, taught the value of independence, and had always believed that a woman should never apologize for her strength. After her husband passed away 5 years earlier, she promised herself that she would keep living fully, not just surviving. But the world often judged her through the single lens of her age: wrinkles, gray hair, slow movements. People forgot that behind those eyes was a lifetime of resilience. And that day, as she pushed open the heavy glass door of a large, buzzing gun store, Margaret knew she was about to face that judgment again. She wasn't there out of recklessness. She had lived alone for years in a modest house on the edge of town, where nights grew long and shadows sometimes stretched a little too close to her door. The world had changed, crime had crept into her once safe neighborhood, and Margaret had decided she needed protection. Owning a firearm wasn't about aggression, it was about peace of mind. The moment she stepped inside, she felt the energy shift. The store was filled with young men in baseball caps, laughing, showing off, talking about shooting ranges and tactical gear. Their voices echoed with confidence. Margaret's soft footsteps barely made a sound on the tiled floor as she walked toward the counter. A young clerk, barely in his 20s, looked up at her and smirked. "Can I help you, ma'am? Or did you take a wrong turn from the knitting store?" His friends snickered nearby, their laughter like small knives. Margaret's cheeks flushed, but she lifted her chin. "I'm here to purchase a firearm," she said calmly. The young man raised his eyebrows. "A firearm? For you? What are you planning to do, scare intruders with your rocking chair?" The group behind him laughed harder, some whispering jokes about her shaking hands, about her eyesight, even about her being too frail to pull a trigger. Every word stung, but Margaret refused to bow. She had seen harder days. She had buried her husband, raised 2 children alone while working 2 jobs, and had faced storms life threw at her without complaint. But the sting of disrespect cut deep. She stood there, gripping her purse, fighting to hold her ground while every ounce of mockery tried to shove her out the door. Then something happened. The laughter faded as the heavy back door of the store swung open. A tall man in a suit, a rare sight in that setting, walked in. His presence was commanding, the kind that shifted the air itself. Whispers rippled through the room. The CEO of the chain had arrived. His name was Robert Hayes, a man who had built the company from the ground up and whose reputation carried more weight than any weapon in the store. And his eyes locked immediately on Margaret. Robert Hayes didn't hesitate. He walked straight past the laughing clerks and stunned customers, stopping in front of Margaret. Without a smile but with unmistakable respect in his voice, he said, "Ma'am, it is an honor to serve you today." The room went silent. The clerks who had mocked her froze, their smirks vanishing as Robert gestured toward the display. "What are you looking for? A home defense model? Something lightweight but reliable? I'll personally make sure you leave here with exactly what you need." Margaret's throat tightened. No one had spoken to her with such sincerity in a long time. She nodded, her eyes glistening, and whispered, "Yes, sir, something to help me feel safe at home." Robert turned his head sharply toward the young clerk who had mocked her. "Is this how you treat every customer, or just the ones you think you can belittle?" His voice carried authority, and the boy stammered, face red, unable to answer. Robert didn't wait. He motioned for Margaret to follow him. As he guided her through the store, he explained each option with patience and clarity. Not once did he talk down to her. Instead, he asked her what she felt comfortable holding, what her lifestyle was like, and what features mattered most to her. He treated her not as a frail old woman, but as a capable individual who deserved respect. Margaret tried a small revolver, then a semi-automatic pistol. Her hands shook at first, but Robert reassured her, "Confidence comes with practice, and from what I see in your eyes, you're not someone who gives up easily." Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them away. For the first time in that store, she felt seen, not mocked, not dismissed, seen. By the end of the visit, Robert personally completed her paperwork and arranged for a safe training session at the company's range. As he handed her the receipt, he placed a hand over his heart and said, "Ma'am, you honor us by being here, And let me tell you something, age is not weakness. Age is experience. It is wisdom. Anyone who mocks that is blind. The young clerk stood in silence, unable to meet Margaret's gaze as she walked out. But Margaret didn't walk out small or humiliated. She walked out taller, stronger, her dignity fully intact. That night, Margaret placed her new firearm carefully in her home, but what stayed with her wasn't just the sense of safety. It was the reminder that respect is not optional, it is a right. And in the end, she didn't just walk out with a purchase. She walked out with her head high, carrying not just a weapon, but the proof that no matter her age, she was still powerful. The next time you see someone judged for their age, appearance, or circumstances, remember Margaret. Behind every wrinkle is a story, behind every quiet step is a lifetime of strength. And sometimes, all it takes is one voice of respect to silence a chorus of mockery. Because age is not the end of power, age is the crown of survival.